Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning to everyone who's here. Lovely to have you here, and all of you who are watching online. Very warm welcome to the Aspen Chapel. It's lovely today. We've got Jim Finley with us. Heather's going to be introducing Jim in a moment, but I'm really here to do the housekeeping. And we're not going to have announcements at the end of the service, so I'm going to do them now rather than at the end. First of all, there's going to be no offertory during the Get This gathering, but I am going to put a plate at the back for a retiring collection. So if you brought your wads of cash, then that's the place to put it rather than at the front. So we're going to do that. There is going to be coffee downstairs as well and lots of yummies, so do feel free to join in with that. Also, just want to point out Siam's craft work and also... not the band, but her stuff there. And also, we've got some of Jim's books over here and things like that. So do feel free to browse afterwards the bookshop. It'd be lovely if you do that. We're supporting Explore in doing that. Just a few things about events that are happening this week. For those of a contemplative bent, Heather is doing her Monday morning meditation tomorrow, 8 o'clock till 8:30. If you go on the front page of our website, go to the weekly events, you'll see the link there. It's a Zoom link. You can just do that. Mike, more volume for the streamers, please. They can hardly hear. I get these texts from someone's immediately texted me. Thank you, Heinz. I really appreciate the text. That's very good. Hope you can hear me now. So that's Monday. On Tuesday, we have yoga and meditation here with Mimi in the chapel, so that's happening as normal. Wednesday, there's an artist talk. Now, when you go downstairs for coffee, do go and have a look at the great show here, which is photos of all the various people and structures, not the mountains necessarily, but it's more about, what we're doing here. So look at that, but there's an artist talk and a reopening, because apparently there wasn't much, the weather was bad last time. And that's going to be on Wednesday. The gallery will be open between 5 and 7 o'clock on Wednesday. Also on Wednesday, we're going to have Insights is going to be on Zoom. You can find that on the front page of our website. There's a discussion group and a bit of meditation going on there. And on Thursday, we have Thursday Satsang is happening again. The theme this week is going to be on meditation. So that's happening on Thursday, meditation, 5 till 6:30. But also on Thursday, just competing, last week we talked about death. We had a great conversation around death, and Amy Maron, who's here, did it. And she's also doing a Death Cafe, where you can chat about death on Thursday between 3 and 4 o'clock at Basalt Library. So if you want to talk to her about it, she's here as well. And just remember that in 2 weeks' time, Christian Dillo will be here, the Zen master. So do have a look at the website and sign up for that. I'm just going to hand over to Heather now.
So, hi everybody. Just a brief introduction of Jim for those who weren't here yesterday and who don't know Jim yet. So much to say. Jim, back in the day, was in the monastery of the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky with Thomas Merton, and had Thomas Merton as his spiritual director, and has been a student of Thomas Merton all his life, and of all the mystics. I don't know. He's a clinical psychologist. He's on the faculty of the Living School with Richard Rohr and everyone at the Center for Action and Contemplation. Most of all, he's just a wonderful human. And we're so lucky to have Jim. I said to Jim yesterday, I said, Jim, if you were a musical instrument, I think you might be a recorder. Something about that Rumi line about, how does it go about the Christ's breath, I am a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath breathes through, something like that. And that's what you remind me of, Jim. You're just, the Christ's breath breathes through you, flows through you. So I just had it in my waters, my desire just to play a few notes to get us going this morning, because this is how I cultivate that inner stance that offers the least resistance to being overtaken by all of this. And this is how I process my life, through this piece of wood. It's just holes in wood. So, yeah, just receive this however you can. It's just, it's a prayer. It's a prayer, that's all.
Good morning. Raise your hand if you were here yesterday. Oh, good number. So this is starting fresh for all those who weren't and those who are. And meditation. Last couple years I've been involved in writing my memoir, a healing memoir. It'll be released by Orbis Books in a few weeks. It's called The Healing Path, a memoir and an invitation. And so I would like to reflect on the experience of writing the memoir and to suggest a meditation practice that you would write yours. And I think we are writing our memoir in our head all the time, but how to make it as a spiritual practice. I'd like to reflect on this, really. You know, I guess at the factual level, I tried to just tell the truth, one sentence at a time, starting with my first memories at 3 years old of being severely traumatized by a violent alcoholic father, and how my faith, instilled in me by my mother, who was a devout Catholic, sustained me through the years, all that. And how in the 9th grade I discovered Thomas Merton. I was deeply moved by that, and read The Sign of Jonas every day, where the violence was getting worse. And how when I graduated from high school, I got on a Greyhound bus and went to the monastery and entered the monastery. And lived in silence there for 6 years, chanting the Psalms, a cloistered monastery, getting up at 2:30 in the morning, sleeping on a straw mattress on boards in a common unheated dormitory, and using sign language. We didn't talk, we used sign language. And you weren't supposed to make useless signs, it was considered frivolous. and had Thomas Merton for my spiritual director. And it was cloistered. There was no active ministry, so you never left. And no one came in either. And I was led by Merton into the teachings of the mystics. And it kind of radicalized me. It had a very deep effect on me. And I was traumatized in the monastery. And kind of a breakdown, and I left. And came back to my home in Akron. Married the first person I ever dated. In a long-term, very dysfunctional relationship in which I reenacted my childhood. I felt a comfort level with the chaos of that. There were some blessings out of it. I learned things. 2 lovely daughters came out of it, one of whom is here now, Amy. And I learned about things. And while in that marriage, I wrote a book, Merton's Palace of Nowhere, on Thomas. I was a high school religion teacher at a Jesuit high school in Cleveland. And I wrote Merton's Palace of Nowhere. And when that book came out, I started getting invitations to give silent retreats around the United States and Canada. I went on the road giving silent retreats. And one of the first retreats I ever led, there was a clinical psychologist there. At the end of the retreat, he said, if you would make a contribution of the mystical traditions to mental health, I'll see to it that you can have a doctorate in clinical psychology as a gift, including family support. So we left our home in Cleveland, Ohio, moved to Pasadena, California, and went in full-time doctoral studies and clinical studies. And my focus was trauma, treatment of trauma, especially trauma survivors who wanted their spirituality to be a resource in their therapy. And my marriage ended there as my doctoral studies ended. And I met Maureen, my wife, who had been living alone for a long time and kind of a contemplative path. And where we met was I was giving a retreat on the dark night of the soul, St. John of the Cross. And at the end, she came up to me and asked if she could see me for spiritual direction because she was going through the dark night of the soul. So I married her. And we were together for 28 years, 30 years actually. It was bliss. It was just really stunning. She was a spiritual director and a psychotherapist, and we lived this amazing life. And she died a couple of years ago. Died at home, in-house hospice of Alzheimer's. Died and went through that. And so I tell the story. But what I do in the story, not at the factual level, but what I do in the memoir is I share my story at the feeling level in the present tense. So that in the present tense, and especially the places where suffering and God's presence touched each other, like that. And by that I mean, so if I'm recalling a memory when I was 3, some of my very first memories, it isn't just I remember what happened, but how as a 3-year-old child, how I understood what happened. And how as a 3-year-old child, it got into me and it affected me in ways I didn't understand. So I could watch and track my evolving story of internalized understandings, and including what happened in the monastery. And then for the almost 28 years also that I saw people in psychotherapy and spiritual direction, I learned a lot from those people. And I learned the endlessly varied patterns of suffering and deliverance from suffering. So at each path along the way, I inserted lessons that we can learn along the path. So that's the book. It's kind of, I did it. I'm glad I did it. It was a gift to do it. And so I'm encouraging you to consider something. You can either do it in your mind or formally, but if whatever your quiet time is with God, whatever that is, that you would consider writing a memoir like that, like get a journal, and write your own life in the present tense at the feeling level, and your own evolving understanding. How has it come to pass that you have come to be who you are sitting here right now? Being aware of what you are aware of, what you feel about things, what you believe about things, what bothers you, what you're grateful for, what your assumptions are, what are the unresolved matters in your heart? Like, where are you? Say, the unexamined life is not worth living. And you be present. I think it's one of the gifts of aging, is this gift of reflective wisdom. Thomas Merton, Richard Rohr says, he said the problem is, you talk about the elders of the community who hold the wisdom of the community, and not enough old people are elders. They're just grumpy old people. So the fact you're getting older doesn't mean you're getting wiser. See, and your life's in your hands. It's your life. So what would this mean to have a respectful, like an AA, rigorous honesty? See, and being endlessly tender-hearted and rigorously honest about the unfolding of your path. And where are you at now? And you would consider doing that. Some considerations that might come from that. The first consideration, it comes from imagining that you've decided to join a very special group of people. And it's 50 people of all different men and women, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, race, gender, a collection of humanity. And the thing is, you're going to sit in a big circle. You're going to meet together for once a week. There'll be a psychotherapist there to protect the group. And the guidelines are going to be this. Once a week, someone is going to share their story at the feeling level, especially the suffering in their life, and where their spirituality sustained them in their suffering, or where their spirituality failed to sustain them in their suffering. How they were transformed, broken, and all, right up to where they are now. After they leave the meeting in the morning, what are they going to face when they go home? Like their life. As you listen, everyone sits in the circle and listens, and at the end, no one's allowed to give advice, and no one's allowed to criticize, but everyone can offer words of support. And you agree to, the group agrees to hold that person in prayer during the week, like this. Also, it's anonymous meetings, that what happens in the room stays in the room. And so the first one, and you're affected by that, you listen to this person's story. Everyone's got a story inside. And when they risk sharing their story like this, see, and you come back the next week and you sit in the same chair every time, and the next time it's the next person, it's the next person, it's the next person. And it has an accumulative effect on you. As you listen to the trauma resolved, the trauma unresolved, the blessings, the brokenness, the pathos, and the strange dignity of the human experience, the resiliency of the human spirit to rise above in the midst of all obstacles. And the day comes, it's your turn. It's your turn. And you just go for it. You just share like this at the feeling level, your life with these people. And you trust you're in a place where it's safe to do that. And it is safe to do that. And you just tell the truth of yourself. And and also the unresolved, like where are you today with this, with the hurts and so on. So the idea would be then that you would write your memoir in that spirit. You would tell your story. You would just tell the truth at the feeling level. The truth will set you free. Just tell the truth. See? And as you look back at things that you did or failed to do that you feel badly about, because it caused suffering to yourself or other people, and you could do anything to take it back, and you can't take it back. It isn't. See? And where are you at with that? And how do you carry that in your heart? And how, with God's grace, have you learned to be released from that and to forgive yourself, because God already has forgiven you completely. God, matter of fact, God infinitely already knows all about it. See, because you don't have to, you're already forgiven. When Ladislaus Boris suggested, he said, imagine someone you love very, very, very much, and you did something, that they love you so much, and you did something to betray them. You did something that hurt them. and they know that you did it. And when the person you did it to forgives you, you can't accept their forgiveness. You can't forgive yourself for it. And he suggested that God's love is the fires of hell. The people in hell are surrounded by God's love, and it burns because they cannot join God in forgiving them completely like this. The strange ways we hold on to the hurting places like that, you know. And you would look back at your life, at the people in your life also who inflicted wounds. And especially if they were the people you depended on to love and trust and be there for you, the abandonments, the betrayals, the hurts, and how maybe you still carry that inside. Likewise, who were the people that blessed your life? Maybe the people who saw value in you and you couldn't even see it yet, and they could see it. Sometimes you have the feeling you're in the presence of someone who's more present to you than you are, and they see something in you, a value you cannot yet see. And so you have to face something. Either I'm tricking the person into thinking I'm a good person, see, or I'm tricking myself in my stumbling block of not knowing how to let go of my insistence of not being a good person, like this. And so who are the people who hurt you, but who are the people that set you free? Even to what extent you could let it in, not, and who are they now? The people that set you free. And where are you at? Like, write out the inner story of your heart. Like, where am I at with myself? For God's sakes, you know, seriously. And here's something else. It isn't just who are the people that have and are inflicting pain and blessings, but what is the pain you're inflicting on them to this day? Withholding something they're waiting to hear from you and you don't say it. See? Where they're waiting for you to stop talking to them the way you do when you're mad and you don't stop. See? And you don't intend to necessarily either. Well, you intend to and you don't know how to stop. And you don't know how to admit it to them and get vulnerable and say, I'm sorry. See? Or when they say to you, you know what? The day I decided to link up with you was the best decision I made in my whole life. Because you're amazing. And you say back, yeah, I know. See, you're lucky. But I'm lucky too. I'm a very broken, shining, precious, broken person, like you are. See, we're in this together. And write it out like this. And what's it asking out of you? Really, like to let go of something, like a hurt or the withholding from yourself or the preciousness of yourself or the gift of your life. A little image. Imagine you're rummaging through an old drawer somewhere and you come across a journal that you wrote 10 years ago, 20 years ago, let's say. And you even forgot you wrote the darn thing. The things you worried about, the things you were confident about, the things you were so clear about. And if the you that wrote that journal could see you that reading it now, that person would faint. Because you have no way of knowing where in the hell you're going to end up and how you got there. And yet we labor under the illusion that we're figuring it out. We write in our journal tonight, it took so long to finally get it. But if you could see the you that's going to read that journal 10 years from now, if you're still alive, you'd faint again. See? You know, like this. And so what is the unforeseeability of it all for us? It's something to ponder, that your life is worth living, and it's worth living with integrity and vulnerability and honesty, because death is coming. See? Death is coming. It's getting closer even as I speak. Breath by breath, we're living our one less breath to breathe life. Just use up another one. Just use up another one. And it's coming quicker than a flash. Trust me. See, like this. See? Like that. So here's the question. When the hour comes and you disappear, and you will, and it all ends. When it all ends, what is it in you that will never end? Because you're eternal. You're eternal. And can you discover it now? And does it have to do with the mystery of love? Like this, seriously. See, how can I learn to die and let go of everything that hinders me from realizing the preciousness of myself and my brokenness, and the preciousness of these people around me in their brokenness? And how can I have a softened heart to that, a kind of a quiet courage like this? And I think for us, all world religions say this in their own way. For us, it's Jesus. It's the mystery of Jesus. And see, because in the Gospels, we're shared Jesus' life. From birth to death, we're shared with Jesus' life. And by reflecting on Jesus' life, the light that shines from his life reveals our life. The interesting thing about when you're having a dream, it's interesting to know that everyone in the dream is an aspect of you, because no one else is in there but you. See? So it's different aspects of yourself. So it's very interesting in the Gospels. Jesus met all kinds of people. And everyone that Jesus talked to in the Gospels is an aspect of you. That every one of us is Jesus' mother, and every one of us is Judas. See, that every one of us is Mary Magdalene, and every one of us is the thief hanging on the cross. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. It's us. It's us. So my thought to you would be to consider this. To consider this. And kind of sit deeply with the mystery and the depth of your unfolding life, which I guess is what draws you to come and be here, because this is what this is about. Someone sent this little card. Nicholas brought it into me, and from Thomas Merton. So I'll end with this prayer. Merton writes. This is in what's the book? Thoughts in Solitude. It's a lovely little book, short little chapters. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. That's a good prayer, really, for all of us like this. So, where are we at time-wise for questions, or is the time up? Or?
Yeah, we've got a good half an hour.
We have a good half hour.
So we could do a small meditation if you like, and then take some questions after that, or we can take some...
No, I like that. I like that. Let's do this. Let's do just a 2-minute sit. How would that be? I'll ring the bell. We'll just sit in silence for 2 minutes. Oh, let's do this first. Stand and stretch for a second in silence. It's important. The physiology of spirituality. Okay, good. You see that? Okay, just 2 minutes, just to sit for 2 or 3 minutes in silence. And what I do here is I invite you to sit straight and fold your hands and we'll bow together. And then we'll sit together in silence for a few minutes. Then I'll ring the bell again and we'll bow, have a reflection. Just sit straight, fold your hands and bow. Okay. So we have almost a half hour if we want for dialogue, for questions. So Heather will, Nicholas, yes.
You know, we do our best here to try and do good in the world. You know, we do our practice, we focus on what we think is going to be loving, we try and respond to circumstances in a loving way. And yet we look out into the world and we see so much suffering in different places. And I wonder what your thoughts are about the future. I mean, do you see green shoots around the world? Do you see what those of us who are, you know, in the work of love, you know, are we making a difference, do you think? What's your perspective as you look out and, you know, having done this now for all these years and looking out into the world, what are the green shoots that you see? I'm just asking what your perspective is on what's going on at the moment.
This is my sense of it. That when you look back through history, the world, the collective human experience, has always been a collective of beauty and tragedy, and it always will be. And I think that God's mercy permeates the bittersweet alchemy of that tragedy. There's Marcus Borg, the scripture scholar, and he wrote a book on the last life of Jesus as a biblical scholar on the trial and kind of walked you through Jesus' last life. And the image that he gave, he says, you know, Pontius Pilate was coming as procurator from Rome with soldiers with armor and weapons in a parade coming into Jerusalem to preside as a Roman power over the Jewish people. And coming from the other side of Jerusalem, Jesus was riding on a donkey, and people were waving palms. Hey, Hosanna, 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 hey. He said, the real question, and both parades are always going on, the real question is, which parade do you belong to? Like this. And to know that if you choose the Jesus parade, which is mercy, what's the view like from the cross? See, what's it look like, really? No. And Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And we bear witness. So we make a difference. We hope we make a difference. But in the measurable order, that distance is contingent and fluctuating. But the sincerity of our effort is the grace that permeates everything unexplainably, like that forever. You know, as a trauma therapist, sitting with people in trauma, and they're re-experiencing it like this. And it isn't that what happened wasn't terrible, because it is terrible, but it wasn't just terrible. Because shining through it is the beauty of the person, coming out under the rubble of internalized trauma and abandonment. See? I thought I was what was wrong with me. And it isn't just that I'm free, that I've come from the darkness into the light, but I brought out with me what I learned in the darkness. And that's the way I see it. I think that's how I see the world. Yeah. By the way, also this thing about when we betrayed somebody and done wrong, I've done my own things, everybody has. It isn't just that we learn to work it through, we're forgiven or not forgiven, however it goes. But here's the thing, although it's regrettable that we did it, it wasn't just regrettable, because we learned something there. And we also learned about ourselves on where we were at in our mind when we did it. What we were aware of, we were not aware of. So it's not to justify anything, but it's to understand everything with mercy and forgiveness, all the wiser for it, I think. Yeah.
Sorry to monopolize you. It seems to me you're talking about alchemy here, in that the raw material that's our life, we can either leave it strewn all over the floor and trip over it every single time that we go past it, or we can realize that all that dross that we've got, the detritus of our lives that we've got around us, can be turned into gold. There is a blessing in each of those things that you're talking about.
Yes. I'd put it another way with alchemy. You know, the alchemists of old trying to turn lead into gold. What we're saying here, and really the spirituality of alchemy, is here all along. The lead is gold in disguise, because the gold is love. See? You are powerless to bring yourself into existence. And you're powerless to keep yourself in existence. To sit at the deathbed of a dying loved one, it's clear your next heartbeat belongs more to God than to you, lest you be presumptuous. You cannot keep yourself in existence. You're powerless to do anything to stop God from being infinitely in love with you. That's gold. See? The dross is where we give authority to the craziness. See? We give it. Someone once said, it occurred to me sometimes, that we're always holding out. That someday we'll run into someone who's not confused. And we can say, you got a minute? Let's talk. See, but what if the master, the spiritual teacher, is as confused as you are? But they know that it's just confusion. Why be confused by it? See, we're confused by confusion because we believe our confusion has the final say in who we are. The master limps, but the master is not handicapped in the limping, because the master knows it's just limping. See? But we're embarrassed by the limping. We hope no one notices the limping. And so that's the thing. The alchemy is seeing the gold that shines bright and gives itself to us as the dross, but seen for what it is, to start shining through, if that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Hi. I liked your roadmap for healing and healing trauma specifically. Also, when Nicholas asked the question about the future, I just had this feeling that everything in the future is the problem that we're thinking about the future. I had this thought about the war in Ukraine, it's all about some idea that it should be some sort of a united something in the future. Otherwise, there would be no reason for this war without somebody's idea. And I just really appreciate what you said and how healing ourselves, being in the present, has the ripple effect of healing the future. I'm not sure if I have a question. I just appreciate what you were saying.
Thank you. And I want to reflect on your reflection for a minute. Yes. See, what I think about when I look into the future, I'm looking into the unforeseeability of my own life. That's what I'm looking at. And so what does the future hold? I know in my heart what it holds, more of the same. It holds more of the same. The details are always shifting, but the essence remains. And what will be there in the future are more problems. Don't you ever wonder when you're solving problems, just when you finish solving the last problem, a whole new crop springs up. Like, where in the hell are all these problems coming from? That's what the Buddha wanted to know. Where's all this suffering coming from? But the other side of it is, where are all the blessings coming from? And that's what it'll be, the alchemy. The bittersweet alchemy of burdens and blessings and burdens and blessings. And it will be for me, hopefully, all the wiser to have a broad-based, grounded clarity about that. See? Because the alchemy just isn't the bittersweet alchemy of darkness and light, which is always there. The bittersweet alchemy is this infinite love that utterly transcends, wholly permeates the bittersweetness, and is itself the infinity of the bittersweetness itself. That's what I think the mystery. It's like incarnate infinity intimately realized within yourself. See, what is the divinity of standing up and sitting down? And can I taste it? and live by it. How is God the infinity of my laughter, and God's the infinity of every tear that falls from my eyes? And how can I find my way to that? And when I talk this way poetically, there's a part of me that sees it, and there's a part of me that doesn't see it yet. There's a part of me that still can't quite get it, and part does. And so it isn't as if we're trying to hope we become enlightened before the buzzer goes off and we die. See, we're going to die confused. It's too bad. See, but we're to endlessly circle back around. The part that sees it is to endlessly circle back around to be tender-hearted toward the part that doesn't see it yet, because that's God. That's mercy. And even be merciful to that in you that can't bear to be merciful to yourself yet. Because when you're merciful, the crying starts. And then the crying is a deliverance. And this is how we walk our strange walk together in life, I guess. Yeah.
May I just ask, you mentioned the trauma in the monastery, and would you be willing to share that, and did it connect at all to the trauma repetition of
Yes,
your dad?
when I was there, I was sexually abused by one of the monks who was my confessor. And it shattered me. And I lost refuge. I had no... See, because when the trauma was going on at home, I had a place to go to the monastery. But then when it happened in the monastery, there was no place to go for me. So I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell the abbot. I didn't tell Thomas Merton. I didn't tell Father Hughes Bamberger, who was a psychiatrist, because of this person, the position they held in the monastery. And I just left. And for a while I dropped out of the church because of it. I would still go to Mass when I came home. I would go with my mother to Mass. And I would sit at Mass and think to myself, I don't see how God can buy into an outfit like this. It seems so hierarchical, so patriarchal, so hypocritical, so dishonest like this. See? And then I realized what the community is a community of infinitely loved broken people, is what it is. I found refuge in the Dharma. Merton introduced me to Buddhism and the Dharma and deep yoga. It kind of saved me. And I would get up early in the morning and sit on the floor, light a candle. I'd do asana, I'd do postures, and do zazen practice. And then I started reading, the same way I would read Zen Master Dogen or the sutras. I started slowly reading the words of Thomas Merton like prayers. And I found my way back into mystical Catholicism again, you know. And Thomas Merton once said to the novices, he says, you know, we all came here with high hopes. And we were all walking around disgruntled. Because once you get in here, you discover half the people in here are crazy, which is true. See, and then you see an old lay brother coming towards you down the cloister like a transparent child, and you know he found what you came here looking for. He said, life is 98% Mickey Mouse, and it doesn't help to relocate, because you'll find Mickey Mouse waiting for you at the airport to show you to your new apartment. The key is to discover the kernel of pure gold that's hidden in the middle of every situation and live by it like that, you know. And so, yeah, that's what it was for me. Yeah.
About 53 years ago, some key folks sort of built this chapel as kind of a new hope for theology, because the old-time religion wasn't really doing it for a lot of people. And statistically, you know, attendance at all faith-based organizations, certainly in educated countries, is plummeting. Not that we're not still spiritual people. So the idea was, okay, let's create something here that's going to be sort of the Aspen Institute for New Theology that'll speak and nurture and help us with our spiritual psychological path. And thank you very much for the 3 scoops of your presence yesterday and today. If you could just be czar of the planet what would you recommend for some of these faith-based organizations to, be a little bit more effective at what they're doing?
Really, you're the one who designed this church?
Yeah.
I want to say something about that. It's quite striking. You get the same feeling of the cathedrals in Europe. Have you ever been to it? Is that it's a state of grace consciousness in stone and glass. I was in Madrid, a family that stunning. It's a state of, and when you enter the threshold, you can tell the task there is not linear. See, the task isn't really to solve anything, figure out anything. It wasn't built for that. This was not built to solve anything. It wasn't built to fix anything. It wasn't. It's to sit quietly in the depth of something so utterly pure and simple and transparent and delicate, and let it have its way with you. And so the aesthetics of this, the artistry, the precision of the careful craftiness of this, what a gift that the person did this. And the same with the music, with the thing like that. It's the same. You can tell when someone's channeling something. And that's how I feel when I talk. If you notice, listen very carefully to my talks, you'll see they have no content. Really, I've not defined a damn thing. Seriously, I haven't solved anything. Really, I've tried just because I'm still trying to get to another day. You know what I mean? I have a hard time. See, but there's something shining through it all, and this is my way of bearing witness to it, like that. And so my sense is this: I'm not czar of the world, but I would say this. See, God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son. And Jesus came. What Jesus reveals, that God's response to us in our dilemma, is to become identified with us as precious in our dilemma. And for to be czar of the world, to suggest that each person in your own heart be ever more tender-hearted and grounded in the preciousness of yourself and your brokenness, so that you might become someone in whose presence others are better able to sense something of their preciousness and their brokenness, so that they in turn might pass on the contagious energy of endless deliverance in the world. It spreads. Like that. Isn't that how it always works? Like someone catches fire with it, and because they burn so bright with it, it draws people, and it passes on. It's an endless process, and that's what I would say. That would be my thought, Yeah.
I have a technical question about memoirs. Do you consider that anybody mentioned in the memoir should be dead? Because when we read memoirs, they're often about people that have died. And those are the characters that play such a big role. But there's probably some that play a big role still that aren't dead.
That's true. That's true. In Merton's memoirs, in his journals, he asked that they not be published until everyone written about them was dead. One person, I used to like to read books on writing, the craft of writing. It said when a writer is born into a family, that family is doomed. Like, oh my God. And so here's what I think. And I did this in the memoir. I have a right to tell the truth of myself, but to tell it in a way that's respectful. So in my book, I left almost everything out, but I didn't leave out what they did. And I didn't leave out, and I tried to do it with no way of judging them. No way of judging them. And I have to tell the story of what they did because it's what they did to me. Otherwise, I can't tell the truth of my story. So there's a certain way of not saying anything. And there's a certain way of being mean-spirited. This is your chance to let them have it, which is just more confusion. But there's another way to walk your walk by saying what happened. And the real issue is, how did it affect you? Where were you at the time? And where are you now with it? And so that's what I did in the book. really. I try to keep everything else beyond that, just not to mention it, for that reason. It's a delicate point, really. Yeah.
I just have a question for you as a therapist. Do you find the process of EMDR consistent with a spiritual posture?
The rapid eye movement?
Yeah.
Yes. For some people, it's extremely effective. I know about it, but I've not practiced it. I've not studied it. And I have some sense of the physiology of it, or why it works. One thing I found is that you're dealing with a precise trauma. It's much more effective than long-term internalized abandonment, childhood abandonment and trauma, with more layers to it. So there's that physiological intensity, but there's also the layers of, where you start up in the limbic system and in the depths of your soul, the story. And so all by itself. But for some people, like it really it can be very helpful. But I've not practiced it. I've not learned it. Yeah. Oh, it's that you tell that it's done in different ways. So the therapist would have you talk. This is one way it's done. The therapist would have you talk about the trauma. And then when you finish talking about the trauma, one way they would hold up like a wand. And as you talk about, you would ask you to follow with your eyes and go back and forth, follow with, then keep talking about the trauma. And what it does, this is the physiology of it, is what happens when you gaze back and forth, it dislodges right hemisphere. And when you dislodge the right and the left hemisphere, it sets something open and something can come through because we're stuck in. So, see, that's the thing, that whenever we're traumatized, an internalized trauma, we kind of gather around the trauma and it's like this, and we can't contextualize broader frames of reference that would shed light on the trauma. And it's like same way they've done brain, where you can watch brain activity live, watch it happen, and interpersonal neurobiology. They linked up a mother's brain to her infant's brain. And as they gaze into each other's eyes, the same place in their brains light up together. Interpersonal neurobiology. Likewise, what happens when you look into your mother's eyes and no one looks back? See? Or you look into your parents' eyes and they're the one who incested you, or beat you, or walked away, or said. See? And you get stuck there and you get, that's trauma. I know there's something, I went through it myself. See? And so there's different ways to be dislodged from it. And that's one way. And the other way, I used other ways.
So, okay, one more question and then maybe
one more, okay. Yeah. Then I want to end with a joke.
So yesterday you mentioned 3 aspects of whatever you talked about. Practice, and then
teaching and community.
Yes, right. And I was just wondering, could you expand on that thought?
Yeah, reflect on that some more, like refine? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we say that to live this way, there's like 3 pillars that sustains it. And I suggest it moves at 2 different levels. One level is practice. Practice is any act habitually entered into with your whole heart that takes you to the deeper place. And you would begin spiritually first with God's presence in your life. You would start first with grace to get grounded so you can face the trauma with grace. And you would practice it. And at the first levels, it tends to be Lectio Divina, discursive meditation, and prayer. So the idea would be you'd sit quietly, you'd open the scriptures, or it could be the words of a saint, or Thomas Merton, the prayer that I read. But the idea would be you listen to words, and when you listen to them, they're beautiful, even before you think about them. In your heart, you know they're beautiful because they're true. And in your heart, you believe that God's personally saying that to you. God's speaking to your heart. So that's Lectio. The first rung of the ladder to heaven is learning how to listen to the beautiful. All the other is still there. See? But you've momentarily put it in the background to let this happen. Next, God says, now that I've spoken to you, your turn, you talk to me. What do you think? See? You know, and you're real honest with God. You dialogue back and forth. See, I fear not, I'm always with you. And so you say to God, you know, as you well know, Lord, I'm afraid a lot, actually. As you well know. No wonder. Look at what I carry inside of you. You know it more than I do. And by the way, before you talk, see, you were afraid also. Because in the Garden of Gethsemane, you sweat blood because you knew what was going to happen. See? You know? And my God, why hast thou forsaken me? You blamed God for your plight. Then you handed yourself over to the God you could no longer find. See? You know what it's like. See? And help me to hand myself over to you in the places of myself that can no longer find you. It would go like that. And then the prayer would come from your heart. Help me with this. Because the meditation's not enough. It's love that solves it. So you help me to find the love, to find a grounding place to do this. As it deepens, then, along with it, then, so that's the practice. The teaching, then, is any teaching, the scripture, any teaching that bears witness to this is the teaching. It's a spiritual teaching. It rings true. It might be scripture, a saint, a poet, but it rings true is the teaching. It bears witness to it. The little prayer I read by Merton is the teaching, like this. And awful, with the mystics at least, they offer guidance in how to find your way. Because they know what it's like to be fragile like this. And they've been there themselves. And so they offer guidance. And you're subject to self-deception. And you reflect upon it and walk with it and listen to it. And have your daily rendezvous with the practice and the guidance. And then the community, your main community is God. You and God sustain. And just one person in your life in whose presence you know you're not alone on this path. Or put it another way, one person in your life that sees you as they are and they love you. See? Like there's just one person. And that's your community. You can trust them with this. And so you find your practice, you find your teaching, you find your community. And you have to be faithful to it every day because it's very delicate. And the intensity, the tripwires of pain keep overtaking you. The pressures of the day. Merton said, wouldn't it be nice if the world would politely step aside to let you live a contemplative life? I could be so holy if it wasn't for my life. My life's in the way. So one Zen master once said, it would be so much easier, but so much more simple if we were asked to be simple in a simple world. But we're asked to be simple in a complicated world. See? And how can I find that place? So every time you're done with your quiet prayer, you ask God for the grace not to break that. And then as it deepens, it becomes more mystical. As it becomes more wordless. It's like a wordless, quiet, transparent, where you and God mutually disappear as dualistically other than each other. See? Like that, like unexplainably. Like that, and you lean into it, and it's like that. Yeah. So that's that, yeah. Psychotherapy is like that too, by the way. Has those same three, but in another level, like in another, but they go together. Now, we're done?
Yeah.
My joke. Actually, I'll tell several jokes. Are you ready? These are contemplative jokes. These people are studying how to yoga practice on chanting Om. And they're at this big grounds of this beautiful monastery with woods and everything. And the yogi master teaches them to chant Om. And he said, no, go out through the woods and so on, just for several hours, just sit there and practice Om. And I'll come around and sit with each of you. And in the middle of this property, there's like a little lake there. And 200 or 300 yards off the shore, there's a little island. And the yogi's walking around looking, and sitting there on the shore of the island, there's one of the students sitting there like this. And real loud, the person's going, Om Ma, Om Ma. So the master yells over, it's not Om Ma, it's Om. And the person goes, what? He said, it's not Om Ma, it's, the person goes, what? He goes, and the person gets up and comes walking to the person on the water and says, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What did you say? And the teacher said, never mind. Another story, someone sent me a cartoon. It shows a monk meditating out in the woods, on a mountain alone. And he has his back to you, and he's looking at a mountain. And on top of the mountain, there's a huge bronze gong, like the size of this. And there's a full moon right over the gong. And the person wrote, this is what it's like listening to your talks. He says, the monk says, the gong is like the moon. You see dot, 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 let that sink in how deep that is. And then he says, and the moon is like the gong, dot, 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 dot. Then he says, the gong and the moon being alike are dot, dot. Oh, hell with it. Waiting for the end, there is none. And last joke, there's a chicken in the chicken yard, and her legs are sticking straight up in the air. And another chicken comes over and says, what are you doing? She says, I'm holding the sky up. And the other chicken said, but you can't do that. Yes, she said, I know, stiffening her legs a little tighter, but we all have to do the best we can. Anyway, thank you for the grace of being here.
So here ends the end of this amazing weekend with you, Jim. Just thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for coming, and all of you watching online. You know all that you need to know about the rest of the speaker program, but for now, thank you so much, Jim. You've given us treasure that we can spend the rest of our lives unpacking. So thank you. Another clap.